older Americans were too white. As Dooling put it, quote, racial and ethnic minority groups are underrepresented among adults aged 65 and older. And this meant, according to Dooling, they could not be allowed to get the first COVID shot, whether they needed them or not. So instead, Dooling recommended giving priority to a group the government started calling essential workers. Their main qualification was not that they were essential, but they were less white than old people. So that's what the CDC went with. Its panel overwhelmingly Kathleen Kelly's recommendation. None of this got a lot of notice at the time, but it was a major change. Never in American history, modern history in any case, has the federal government made it official policy to withhold life-saving medical treatment from Americans on the basis of their skin color. But that's exactly what the CDC did. Those most likely to die of COVID had to wait weeks until their vaccines were approved. How many of them died in the meantime as they waited? No one kept track of those numbers because nobody seemed to care. And because nobody cared, the trend continued. Race had become a deciding factor in the distribution of critical health care in this country. Several states made it explicit. Whites would go last in the COVID vaccine queue, regardless of need. The state of Vermont did this, so did the state of Montana. And then the moment he was declared president-elect, Joe Biden made it official. A concept called equity, a kind of hyper-aggressive, racially hostile affirmative action, would form the basis of everything the new administration did, beginning with COVID policy. Here's Biden before even being sworn in last year.
But I want to be very clear what my priorities are for distributing this emergency aid swiftly and equitably. Our focus will be on small businesses on Main Street that aren't wealthy and well-connected, but are facing real economic hardships through no fault of their own. Our priority will be Black, Latino, Asian, and Native American-owned small businesses, women-owned businesses.
So you'll notice the assumption in that sentence, which undergirds all the assumptions behind the administration's equity policy. And that is that non-white means poor, and non-white means less healthy. As a factual matter, that's certainly not true across the board. It's not even close to true. In fact, the highest income groups in this country are not white. But they've run with it. And he made good on that promise. In its first year, the Biden administration awarded billions of dollars in COVID relief, for example, to black farmers purely on the basis of their skin color. Race was the only criterion. Now, doing that was illegal, obviously. It violated all kinds of federal laws, and the federal court soon struck it down. But the White House didn't stop. They accelerated, and they applied that same standard to everything, very much including the allocation of health care. Health care for all, that was the slogan for generations. The new slogan under the Biden administration was health care for favored groups. And those policies continue tonight. They're legal, they're immoral, and yet they are all but ignored by the media and, by the way, by Republican lawmakers. Several weeks ago, for example, the Food and Drug Administration released a fact sheet on a monoclonal antibody called sotrovimab. Sotrovimab is at this point the only monoclonal antibody treatment that is proven effective against the latest variant of the coronavirus. The FDA provided guidance for physicians in all 50 states, telling them how to determine which patient should get this treatment, this critical treatment. Physicians, the FDA explained, should consider, quote, race and ethnicity as they administer treatment. And so physicians are doing it across the country. In Utah, those patients are triaged by a scoring system that determines whether or not they qualify for these potentially life-saving antibody treatments. Look at this chart. It shows this question. You'll notice that race often counts more than physical health. The state of Utah, for example, gives 2 points to anyone simply for not being white. You win if you're not white. If you have congestive heart failure at the same time, you get 1 point. So if you're a white congestive heart failure patient, that's not enough for you. It's the same story in Minnesota. Minnesota awards 2 points to so-called BIPOC patients. That means anyone who's not white. If you have high blood pressure and you're 60 years old, you get 1 point. So tough luck for you. Imagine if that was one of your parents. It is one of someone's parents. In New York, writes Aaron Sabarium in a shocking new piece for the Washington Free Beacon, quote, racial minorities are automatically eligible for scarce COVID-19 therapeutics, regardless of age or underlying conditions. It doesn't matter what kind of health they're in. All that matters is their skin color. Whites don't qualify. This is not health care. It's punishment. It's punishment meted out on the basis of skin color. Now, the justification for all of this, and the authorities could not be clearer about it, they've taken their ideas directly from America's colleges. They'll tell you why they're doing this. The justification is history. The United States has mistreated racial minorities in centuries past, they say. Therefore, whites must suffer now. So your ancestors did bad things, or people who looked like your ancestors did bad things, so now we're withholding medicine from you. They call this equity. It's not equity. It is collective punishment. It's the North Korean standard. It's the definition of evil. And in case you're wondering that's actually what it is, consider this. A young Haitian man could cross our border illegally today. Many have. That person could show up at a clinic in New York tomorrow for COVID treatment and get preference over an elderly American citizen purely because of his appearance. Think about that. The Haitian has not suffered from systemic racism in America, whatever that is. He just got here, but he goes to the front of the line anyway. Now, that's not a criticism of the Haitian. It's not his fault. He didn't make the rules. But the Americans who did make the rules clearly didn't make them on the basis of public health. They made them in an effort to hurt a specific group of Americans, and they're succeeding. This is happening everywhere, even in places you would never expect it to happen. Watch as this man talks to an employee at a Texas medical facility to find out exactly what their policies are.
So I'm not going to be able to get it today? Because I don't qualify? What if I like, smoke and vape? I heard that was no? Okay. What if I were black and Hispanic? Then I'd be able to qualify? Okay. I'm being denied medical service because of my race, is that?
So you can't get life-saving drugs from the government of Texas if you're the wrong color. Think about that. We reached out to the Texas Department of Health about this back in November, and they denied allocating any health care on the basis of race, but of course they were lying. The North Central Texas COVID-19 Regional Infusion Center was created by the Texas Department of Health. Last year, the Infusion Center's website, which says it's state-funded, featured an information sheet that explicitly listed race as an eligibility factor for getting antibody therapy. That's what you just saw there. Someone being denied medical treatment because he's the wrong color, without even assessing the relative health risks involved. The website maintained by the Tarrant County, Texas, by the County of Tarrant County in Texas, explains that being non-white automatically makes you eligible for treatment. So this is still happening on a wide scale. The question is, why are Americans putting up with this? It's immoral. We're used to hearing that your kids can't get into a certain school if they're the wrong color, or get a certain job if they don't have the right appearance, and apparently we've accepted that. The only sin is complaining about it. That makes you a monster. But denying health care to American citizens because of their race, that is too much. Actually, it's terrifying.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.
People think unusual circumstances means complicated taxes. But for a TurboTax Live expert like me, it just makes things interesting. So, give us everything you've got.
What if I'm a professional gamer with a ton of expenses?
If they help drive views, let's talk deductions.
What if I'm in a state with no income tax, but my survival videos are viewed in 38 countries?
I can help. And if this is a business dinner, save.
Here's the most interesting thing I saw this week. The New York Times commissioned a pair of focus groups, one with Democrats, one with Republicans, to find out their attitudes to the state of our democracy, January the 6th, all of that. And it turns out they were surprised by what the Democrats said because it ran completely counter to the entire narrative that's been pushed for the last year by the New York Times, by all the rest of the establishment media, and by Democrat politicians. Here's what they said about the Capitol riot. And as you listen, remember these are Democrat voters saying this. Quote, it's an inevitable boiling point of flawed systems that were put into place and have only gotten worse over the years. The enemy is the system that needs either a complete makeover or severe reform in order to protect the livelihoods of the people, not the rich. Oh, not an attempted coup then, an insurrection. Here's another Democrat, quote, I think it was the frustration of the American people. People are fed up with politics telling you lies. We heard a lot about the big lie this week, but as that Democrat voter said, the reason so many Americans are frustrated and angry is because the people in charge just seem like a bunch of big liars. They lie shamelessly all the time.